Do you believe in the power of justice and courage? Prepare yourself for a story that will stir your emotions. A black teacher, 6 months pregnant, was the victim of a cruel act that almost cost her life and that of her son. But what began as a nightmare in the Brás neighborhood in Sao Paulo, Brazil, ended up revealing the strength of a community united against corruption. Helena Santos, a dedicated history teacher, revolutionized the Brás neighborhood with her social project. In just 6 months, she increased the number of students from 15 to 150, taking teenagers off the streets and offering a new perspective on life. However, this success upset powerful people in the region, including those who exploited informal youth work. That cold night, Helena was surprised by Sergeant Ricardo Mendes, a police officer known for his violent methods and links to a network of local corruption. Tied to the train tracks, she found herself fighting not only for her own life, but also for that of her unborn baby. But what led this police officer to commit such a cruel act? And how did this teacher manage to turn the tables on him? What Sergeant Ricardo didn't count on was the strength of the community. Students from Helena, local leaders, and even a former student who now worked as a train conductor formed a resistance network. As the train approached, information about the kidnapping were circulating quickly, activating a chain of events that would change everything. Did Helena manage to escape? And what happened to Sergeant Ricardo, which made him regret it bitterly? You will be surprised by the outcome of this story. This is just the first part of an exciting story of overcoming, justice, and transformation. In the next video, you will discover how Helena's courage triggered a revolution in the community. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you don't miss the end of this incredible story. Comment below. What would you do in Helena's place? Let's discuss in the comments. Sergeant Ricardo's motivations and actions. The conflict. Between authority and social transformation, Sergeant Ricardo was always an emblematic figure in the neighborhood where he worked, but not because of the respect or admiration he inspired. He was feared. His rigid stance, combined with a history of abuses of power, cemented his reputation as someone whom no one dared to confront directly. However, this image of unquestionable authority began to be challenged when Helena Santos, with her community school and transformative actions, emerged as a local leader. Helena, a dedicated teacher, not only offered formal education, but also encouraged young people to question the reality around them. In doing so, it helped to create critical, conscious citizens capable of breaking cycles of social exclusion that held many hostage to illegal activities or exploitative jobs. This vision of transformative education was seen by Ricardo as a direct threat to the interests of groups that he, in some way, protected, whether through collusion or indirect profit. Ricardo saw something in Helena that deeply bothered him. She was a black woman, pregnant, determined, and widely respected. This hurt the pride of a man accustomed to subjugating and being feared. His rise as a figure of positive impact on the neighborhood, in contrast to Ricardo's image as an agent of oppression, fueled his resentment. The sergeant did not see the community school just as an educational project. He saw it as an act of subversion. For him, Helena was invading a space that he considered under his control, bringing a message of autonomy and freedom in a community that he preferred to keep under control. Young people who were previously easy targets for illegal work networks, trafficking, or exploitation started attending Helena's classes and looking for alternative lives. This change in social dynamics directly affected the schemes that Ricardo helped protect. He was known for turning a blind eye to illicit activities in exchange for favors or payments. Helena's initiative began to destabilize these networks, attracting not only Ricardo's anger, but also that of other influential people in the neighborhood, who pressured the sergeant to take action. Motivated by resentment and the need to reassert his authority, Ricardo made a drastic decision. He planned and executed Helena's kidnapping with the aim of eliminating what he saw as a threat to his position. His method was cruel and symbolic, tying Helena to the train tracks. This choice was not just an act of physical violence. It was a gesture to publicly demoralize her and instill fear in everyone who might think of following in her footsteps. On the way to the tracks, Ricardo made a point of expressing his indignation, accusing Helena of getting involved where she shouldn't. He blamed her for the disorder that, in his view, she had brought to the neighborhood, deliberately ignoring the positive impact of her work. This behavior reflected not only Ricardo's prejudice, but also his fear of losing control over the narrative and local power. After Helena's kidnapping, the neighborhood, which for years lived under the fear imposed by Sergeant Ricardo, demonstrated that oppression was no match for the unity and strength of a determined community. The mobilization began immediately after Helena's disappearance, with students at the community school being the first to notice her absence. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, they quickly contacted local leaders who had ties to the teacher, such as Padre Juan. Father Juan, a respected figure in the community and a close ally of Helena, was a key player in organizing the resistance. He knew that, against an enemy as powerful and influential as Ricardo, the secret was to mobilize many voices and ensure that his actions were visible beyond the limits of the neighborhood. With the help of young people at the school, the community used social media to spread the news of Helena's disappearance. Photos of her, videos of her classes, and heartwarming messages about her positive impact on the neighborhood were shared en masse, creating an online solidarity movement that quickly attracted the attention of people outside the region. Hashtags like #SalvemHelena and Justisano Bairro began to go viral, bringing pressure from public opinion. At the same time, groups of residents organized community surveillance. They patrolled areas known to be used for illicit activities or as hiding places, with the aim of finding clues as to Helena's whereabouts. Young people who were once targets of Ricardo's oppressive power have now become protagonists in the fight for their mentor's liberation, demonstrating the power of the transformative impact of their education. Helena's students, expertly trained in critical thinking and practical skills, used smartphones to document Ricardo's suspicious behavior and where he moved. These records were shared with independent lawyers and journalists who were interested in the case, strengthening the accusation against the sergeant. Additionally, the group organized live broadcasts of peaceful demonstrations in the neighborhood, gathering residents in front of the local police station to demand answers. The constant presence of cameras and pressure from the media inhibited the actions of Ricardo and his allies, leaving them increasingly isolated and without space to operate in the shadows. As long as Helena remained under Richard's power, her determination did not waver. Despite her fatigue and injuries, she managed to partially loosen the ties that held her. Her movements needed to be cautious, as any sound could alert the henchmen who still roamed the abandoned warehouse where she was being held prisoner. Jorge, one of Helena's closest former students, had grown up under her guidance, becoming a resourceful young man committed to the well-being of his community. Upon learning of Ricardo's plan to make Helena look like the victim of a railroad accident, Jorge took action. He and a small group of friends investigated the train routes that passed near the place of captivity. Knowing that time was short, Jorge had the idea of delaying the locomotive. He and his group set up a makeshift barrier with discarded materials they found along the tracks, blocking the route and forcing the railway crew to stop to remove the obstacle. This bought precious minutes for the other parts of the plan to come into play. While Jorge worked in the field, Lucas, a young investigative journalist who had been following in Ricardo's footsteps for months, intensified his actions. Lucas had an arsenal of evidence against the sergeant: records of telephone conversations, documents that linked Ricardo to corrupt local politicians, and photos that showed clandestine meetings. With Helena's disappearance, Lucas realized it was time to expose everything. He organized a live broadcast, shared on social media, presenting the evidence clearly and unquestionably. The transmission quickly went viral, reaching thousands of people in just a few hours. Public pressure increased, and state and federal authorities began monitoring developments. Furthermore, Lucas managed to send the evidence to wide-ranging press outlets, which began to publish articles that called into question not only Ricardo, but the entire system of corruption in which he was inserted. This exposure put Ricardo's political allies in a delicate position, forcing some to abandon the sergeant to save their own reputations. In the warehouse, Ricardo was informed of the train delay and the news that was beginning to circulate. Furious and feeling cornered, he decided to speed up the plan, ordering his henchmen to quickly deal with Helena. However, at this time, community surveillance efforts proved essential. Residents of the neighborhood who were following movements around the warehouse noticed the suspicious movement and called the state police, now under pressure from the public commotion and media exposure. A group of police officers, this time committed to justice, arrived at the scene within minutes. When the police surrounded the warehouse, Ricardo tried to use Helena as a hostage, but was surprised. Helena, despite being weakened, took advantage of the opportunity created by the chaos to completely free herself from her bonds. She managed to hide behind some boxes while the police negotiated with Ricardo. Jorge, who had accompanied the police to the scene, noticed that Ricardo was distracted. With courage and determination, he managed to guide the police to Helena's exact position, ensuring her safety before any confrontation took place. The operation ended with the arrest of Ricardo and his henchmen. The sergeant, now exposed and without allies, was taken into custody, while Helena was welcomed by the residents who were waiting for her outside. The story that seemed to be heading towards a tragic outcome took an unexpected turn in the final moments. Ricardo, the sergeant previously known for his brutality and prejudice, staged a moment of redemption on the train tracks, the same place he had planned to be the scene of Helena's murder. When Helena went into emergency labor, amidst the chaos and tension of the situation, it was Ricardo who took the lead to help. Despite his mistakes and crimes, he demonstrated humanity in helping Helena, carrying out the birth with a mixture of improvised skill and desperation. The baby's cries echoed across the tracks, a new life symbolizing hope and renewal. It was at that moment that the federal police arrived at the scene, their lights illuminating the scene and marking the immediate end of the confrontation. Ricardo, even though he was surrendered and handcuffed, seemed to change after that experience. The evidence gathered by Lucas, the tireless work of police officer Fernanda, and Helena's firm testimony culminated in a series of arrests that shook powerful structures. Among those detained were businessman Carlos Mendonça, an influential figure behind the scenes of corruption, and Deputy Marcelo Rocha, known for his hypocritical public speech while operating a criminal network behind the scenes. Investigations revealed an intricate web of corruption that involved politicians, business people, and members of the security forces. The exposure of this network dismantled the power of these figures, sending a strong signal that justice could prevail, even against seemingly invincible adversaries. With the fall of these powerful figures, Bras experienced a wave of positive changes. Previously neglected social projects were strengthened, with resources redirected to education, health, and cultural initiatives. Unexpected alliances emerged between rival groups in the community who decided to work together for a better future. The case inspired a collective effort for justice and education. Young people who were previously vulnerable to crime began to see new possibilities through educational and training programs. Helena's community school became the epicenter of these changes, attracting volunteers and national attention. The trial of those involved in the corruption scheme was broadcast throughout the country, becoming a historic landmark. Among the testimonies, those of Helena and Ricardo stood out. Helena recounted her experience and reaffirmed her belief in the power of education and community. Ricardo, in turn, recognized his mistakes, showing regret and cooperating with the investigations. The verdict was categorical. The defendants were found guilty and received severe sentences. The community celebrated the result, seeing in it not only justice, but also an opportunity to start over. Helena continued to expand her social project, now incorporating psychological support and programs aimed at empowering young people emotionally. His figure became a symbol of resilience and transformation, inspiring other communities across the country. The community, previously known for its problems, came to be seen as an example of overcoming and unity. National awards and recognition have highlighted the neighborhood as a model of how individual courage and collective action can transform realities. This story shows us that even in the darkest moments, there is room for light. Helena's courage, Lucas and Fernanda's determination, and the support of a united community teach us that significant changes begin with small acts of resistance and solidarity. May Bras inspire us to fight for justice, education, and equality, always remembering that each of us has the power to transform the world around us. This conclusion perfectly encapsulates the heart of the narrative, highlighting the powerful lessons it brings. The story of Helena and the Bras community reflects the essence of what it means to face seemingly insurmountable challenges with determination, empathy, and unity. She also highlights how individual actions can add up and generate a collective impact, creating lasting changes. Even in the midst of adversity, Helena found the strength to resist. Lucas and Fernanda used their skills to expose corruption, and the community organized in search of justice. Together, they showed that no one is alone in the fight for a better future. May this story be more than an example. May it serve as practical inspiration for us to believe in our power to promote transformations in our own reality. After all, every gesture of resistance against injustice and every step toward solidarity are seeds of a more just and humane world. If this story touched you and inspired you in any way, be sure to follow Reflections and Stories, a channel dedicated to sharing stories of courage, overcoming, and transformation that make us reflect and believe in a better world. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the next content. Here, each story is an invitation to dream, act, and transform. We have lots of exciting and inspiring narratives coming your way. We count on your presence on this journey.